Okay, if I don't get interrupted by a phone call, we're going to go into this video. It's by a YouTube user I rather like called Essence of Thought. Let's see if I can zoom in there so you can actually read it. There you go. And the video is called Same Lying Theists, Even Worse Arguments. Why being an atheist doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm at 7 minutes and 4 seconds into the video. He's doing a wonderful video which is criticizing a fundamentalist literalist who's coming out with all kinds of stuff, and so yeah, I thought this would be quite an entertaining video because I'm not pro fundamentalism, literalism and all that kind of stuff. I'm just not, okay? But sometimes there's some points of view which people who are supposed to be of the critical, scientifically minded like people kind of like come out with, which is basically not necessarily clear-minded. And at this section in the video, he's criticizing Pascal's wager, which I thought would be quite a good critique, but in the end, I just didn't quite get, good stuff from it. So here we go.
So, let's go on to Pascal's wager and why the fuck it does not work.
Yes, please.
4 points as to why it does not work.
I don't know whether I'll get around to doing them all, but we'll have a quick look.
1. If God does not exist, and, you spent your entire life worshipping, you do have everything to lose.
Really?
You have many experiences, as well as all that time and effort you put into worshipping, lost out of your one and only life.
Okay, well, that on its surface is a very interesting point. Let me take a quick swig of tea, as is my wont. What the fuck is worship? This is the question. Alright, I've done a video recently in which I've demonstrated that science has told us that it is statistically proven that you will actually live longer and would be less likely to have very serious diseases if you are part of religious communities and you participate in things such as worship. So whatever this worship thing is, it has some kind of health benefits. Secondly, there's the experiences that one gets as a result of being involved in the worshipful state of mind, which one could say is possibly analogous to being in love. It's a great state of mind if you can actually find it. Thirdly, being involved in a worshipful community provides you with more experiences rather than takes them away. As I've already demonstrated, it's been statistically proven by science that people who are involved in religious communities are more likely to have even more social connections, to be involved in more people, and with more people, okay? And potentially to be doing an awful lot more. So we're talking about activities such as new dating opportunities, we're talking about activities such as barbecues, picnics, meals together, events, theatre visits, and that sort of thing. So these are wonderful experiences which people would be missing out upon, potentially speaking, through, the expanded network of a religious community if you had chosen to not get involved in worship. Is it a question of a waste of time? Is singing a waste of time? Well, what about the experiences of the people who go and do karaoke? They love it. Alright, they love doing karaoke. If you weren't doing karaoke, you'd be doing something else. This is a pathetic argument. I mean, think about it. All the time that you spend singing, alright, or doing something which is therapeutic, or reading, or writing, and other things which are associated with living a religious life. I mean, come on. All these things are experiences which you could have, which could do you some good and connect you with more people, providing you with identity, culture, a mythological structure to life and to understanding. It provides you with a similarity of, ideas which you can discuss with, what's it, a third of the population of the world, or something crazy like that. So, I mean, this is supposed to be someone who believes in, this guy here, someone who's supposed to accept science and scientific thinking and all that kind of stuff, but can't seem to use any form of reason or rationale when applying it to the subject of Pascal's wager in this one particular video. So I think that's actually crazy. But anyway, let's look at the next section.
That is a loss, whether or not you like to admit it.
Or alternatively, it is a greater gain through social connections. Actually.
2.
This should be fun.
If you pick the wrong god.
No.
And then you stand before another god. How do you think that god is going to react to you if you took the belief of a different god on faith, as opposed to suspending belief.
So you mean instead of the father of humanity as in Yahweh, it would be the father of humanity as in Odin? Or what if there is a god, that they're both the same thing and these are two different cultural names for the same thing? If you think about it, cultures which have no access to the outer world have got their own word for telegraph poles, for lampstands, so we might as well have different words or different names for the same thing or the same godlike character. So you're using a religious argument to attack a religious argument without looking at metaphor, without looking at analogy or simile or cultures, or cultural points of view, I should say. So, you know, WTF. Alright, I mean, I don't think it is just me who can see that there is something substantially wrong with this point of view and this attack on Pascal's rage at these wonderful 4 magical points. This is number 2. Oh my god, what if you've chosen the wrong god? I think this is pathetic, to be honest. Sorry, I got distracted by a call just then, but never mind. But you see where I'm coming from. Someone who's supposed to be so skeptical and so scientific should actually be doing a bit of thinking. Let's carry on with his video.
At least as an atheist, I still hold the ability to go, you did not supply sufficient evidence to make me believe in you.
Right, so what he's saying is me being an atheist, I've got a reason to be an atheist, and therefore you, namely the theist, doesn't have a reason to be a theist because you haven't provided enough evidence. Which I can understand. I mean, again, on the surface that seems like a very reasonable presupposition and point of view. But I think that there are problems here because this is an attack against a literalist, but now he's supposed to be focusing in on the idea of Pascal's wager. If it's a question of quality of evidence when you're dealing with something which is by its nature very poetic, alright, as spiritual ideas are, religious ideas are, then essentially you can't really apply the standards of the empirical sciences to them anyway, because it's to do with personal change, transformation, growth, thousands of analogies involved in religious texts. Okay, so we've got to think about, is this particular skeptical individual being sufficiently rational about his attack upon what a religion is, or what a religion could in fact be about. Now, if you're just attacking literalism, then essentially taking the piss in this way is actually quite a constructive thing to do. Okay, because essentially literalism needs to be challenged. But a good way of challenging literalism is to actually look at the religious point of view from a allegorical point of view, and from seeing it as an analogy for life itself, for growth, for change, for progress, for overcoming obstacles, for overcoming issues of personal growth and development, and to explain that, which some literalists will not be able to get their head around because it's a very complex subject. Okay? And therefore it will be a better way of tackling the problem of literalism through using the ideas from spirituality and faith as a means of looking at personal growth. And if you see God as being a state of mind that you reach after a certain period of time of performing a religious life, or if you see the idea of heaven being the state of joy you get after many years of filling your mind full of ideas such as love and tolerance and acceptance and forgiveness and that sort of stuff, then essentially you're moving on to a new level. And then maybe you could see, even as an atheist, you can probably see that there is a benefit to some forms of spirituality and religion, rather than necessarily this literalist interpretation, but being able to poetically look at the stories which come out of literalism and seeing them from a different light and a different point of view, to say that this is poetic and it could therefore be used to help you to reach that state of mind. But I don't think that there's been many challenges from the skeptical community against religion or religious people along those lines.
As a person who went on faith, you lose that ability.
Well, I think there's a few questions there, to be honest.
3. If God was apparently all-knowing, as you claim he is, wouldn't he be able to see through the fact that I only believed out of fear? Wouldn't he see that my belief was not sincere?
Fear of what? Fear of going to an imaginary place with flames and pit of sulfur sounds daft to me. Okay, or is this because, you know, of the whole idea of like God is a vengeful, you know, jealous individual? But the idea of God being jealous and vengeful is also an analogy to what happens if you lose sight of love and tolerance and forgiveness and acceptance and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's an expression of separation from, you know, your tribe, your community, being accepted, and also entering into a mental hell world as a result of having done things that are wrong. And therefore the need, especially for young people and people in primitive communities, to have an instruction and a guide as to what is right and what is wrong, because people often don't instinctively know that, especially if they've had problems which have taken them off the right track. So I think it's a bit more of a complex issue than this guy's making out.
That it was not out of love, but fear.
Well, fear is a separation from love anyway, so if you try and get involved with something which is supposed to connect you to something which is positive, then yeah, I mean, trying to move away from fear to a state of love, or to try and move away from negativity towards positivity, I don't really see anything wrong with that. In particular, if it's just because, you know, if you're just going to church or whatever because you're terrified of the alternative, well, maybe if that stops you from doing something bad, that's a good thing, hypothetically.
4. Hell is no worse than heaven.
Now this one really gets to me.
Heaven is merely an existence of worship.
That's only if you take Revelations literally. Remember, Revelations was written under the influence of magic mushroom and is a poetic expression of what it's supposed to be like when you reach that, you know, state of nirvana or happiness, when you're in that state of joy, after a long period of time of living a life in which you've been doing certain forms of activities, such as contemplating love and forgiveness and tolerance and acceptance and all that kind of jazz, as well as living a life which is as far as close to good as you possibly can. All right, it's a poetic expression of it. It's not a question of you will be in chains, having to say these words, wearing a certain uniform. You know, I mean, this whole fucking, I mean, using literalism to attack literalism is mental. It just really is mental.
That deity you believe in, at least in the Abrahamic religions.
Apart from, of course, Islam, where you're supposed to have like 72 virgins or something, and me being a man, I think that would be really rather good fun, to be quite honest. But even then, that's just a poetic expression of a state of joy. And, you know, if you've had like wild, wonderful, lovely, loving sex with somebody, you know full well that that's a feeling you would love to have forever. And so, therefore, it's a poetic expression of a feeling of joy that you get, you know, at the end of, or towards the end of a, you know, a long life of having lived within the spiritual existence. It's nothing to do with go to heaven and get laid, or go to hell and have your cock cut off. You know, I mean, for fuck's sake.
An eternity of worship, to be stripped of who you are.
No, I just hope that the 72 virgins are stripped so I can get busy. Says he, trying to be as non-creepy as possible. Oh, God.
Yes, both of them will end up the same way.
Well, no. One's talking about happiness, one's talking about sadness. Get real. Lousy argument.
Stripped of who you are, your humanity.
Well, if you're dead, then essentially what humanity are we talking about here?
And everything that makes you, you.
You'll be dead, old chap. Sorry to, you know, tell you, but this is the afterlife. You know, so actually being totally human, it doesn't really come into the equation, and that's if it is real anyway.
Yes, you can make the argument.
I'm making a argument.
That this will be done quicker in hell.
I don't quite know where he gets this from.
But because you claim both of these things to be running to eternity, therefore they are not quantifiable in how bad they are, and therefore neither is worse than the other.
Yeah, I really think the word eternity is used a bit too much. So you do have a point there, but as far as neither, you know, either being as worse as each other, then, you know, get real. If you're not very happy or you've done things that are wrong, you can become emotionally in hell. That's what it means, being in hell. It doesn't mean to say fiery sulphurous pits with a man with little horns poking you up the backside with a pitchfork, because if that's what you think, you're crazy.
Just in one case, you last longer, but you do by bending down as a bitch to an abusive...
Yeah, you can say the B word. Okay, you're very clever.
...deity, whereas as the other...
And I don't know where you get the idea of abusive from, okay? I really don't. I mean, that's... Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
You deny them that right.
I'm just going to leave it here. I've had enough of this guy. And I think you can see that once in a while, so when someone is being critical of a religion or a religious person, they don't have some kind of glowing halo around them just because they're an atheist or they're a skeptic or whatever the fuck it is, okay? It doesn't mean to say there's anything even right about them. It just means to say I'm a person who's doing a lot of staring into a camera and saying something in a passionate way, just like Alex Jones.